right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Social Z Franchise Podcast. I'm the host, as usual, Calvin Smith, coming from beautiful and sunny and hot Destin, Florida today. It's a beautiful day to be out at the beach. I'm very excited to talk to Miss Jenny Sutter from a little south of here in the Tampa area. Jenny, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing amazing, doing amazing. So to kick this off, Jenny, I ask you to do what we always ask our guests to do. Tell us a real quick intro. Your name, where you're from, name of your business, and any other details you can fit into 120 seconds.
All right. Sounds good. So, Jenny Sutter. I am a rare breed Florida native, actually. So, born and raised here in the great state of Florida. I grew up in South Central Florida, but I've spent a lot of time in the Tampa area. I graduated from University of South Florida, so spent the majority of my adulthood here in the Tampa area. I'm currently in Dunedin, which is just a little bit north of Clearwater. So I go into Tampa when I need to, but I stay out of it when I don't need to. I am a franchise consultant or franchise broker, franchise matchmaker, whatever you want to call it is what I do. I'm with FranNet, and so FranNet actually is a franchise. So I do own the FranNet franchise here in Tampa. So you can think of me as a franchise owner of a franchise that helps people find franchises. Say that a lot.
Awesome. And Jenny, how long have you been FranNet franchisee?
Yeah, I purchased this franchise about just over 3.5 years ago. So, not too short, not too long. It's I've really sunk my teeth into it.
Awesome. Well, one of the things we like to really dive into here, Jenny, is your path to getting into franchising, right? So let's go back to maybe UCF or USF, or maybe it was before then, but what drove you to want to become an entrepreneur, and then talk us through the journey from that desire to becoming a franchisee.
So, I actually, grew up and both my parents were educators. I actually had both my parents as teachers, which is, I can tell you, not that fun. But so I never imagined myself, going into the business world. But lo and behold, I go to college, and you start to shift around your majors a little bit, and it just, business stuck with me. So I was a marketing major at, a business major with a marketing focus from USF. I was lucky enough right out of college to actually use my degree. And my first job right out of college, I moved to Texas for a little while, where I worked for a casual dining chain, both corporate and franchise. And I was a regional marketing manager for them, supporting franchisees, supporting corporate-owned locations, and from a marketing capacity. From there, I was able to move back to Florida, which I was happy about, because Texas is great, but Florida is better. And I was, still doing the corporate marketing thing for the restaurant organization, but then I soon found the beauty space. And so I then transitioned from hamburgers to laser hair removal. And I worked for a national med spa chain for about 12 years. And so I started off as a marketing manager with them, moved up and ran the department for quite a while. And that was great. I helped grow them from about 13 locations to just over 135 by the time I left. So we saw some significant growth. Again, it was corporate-owned locations and franchise. So I was, had that franchise support experience. But, while that was all great and nice, I also, during those 12 years, I got married, I had kids, and my priorities were much different than when I started there. So I was really getting tired of traveling and not being able to go to my kids, little Halloween parades or pick them up from school on time even. So I was, just a typical corporate burnout, honestly, where I didn't I was done. I was done with the corporate world. So I started looking for options, and obviously, I could have gotten another job, but it would have been just the same thing, different color walls, different kind of carpet. And I didn't really want that. The level I'd climbed up to, it wasn't going to be much different. And so I thought, okay, well, I don't want to do that. How about starting my own business? And that terrified me. I am not a natural entrepreneur. The thought of me figuring out what to do with starting my own business, maybe marketing consulting or whatever it was, it wasn't in the cards for me. But one thing I did understand is franchises. And I knew that, hey, if you follow the system, it can work. And you don't have to necessarily have the background in that industry. So I started looking for franchises, and I did what most people do, and I Googled best franchise in Tampa Bay. And lo and behold, lots of things came up when I put that Google search in. And so I started researching and got lost really, really fast. Went down a lot of weird pathways of franchise opportunities that should not be opportunities for me. They just weren't fitting what I was looking for. So fortunately, I did find a franchise consultant and started working with her. I hadn't left my corporate job yet. I was still, researching franchises, working my corporate job. And soon I realized, you know what? I know a business is my future, not this corporate job. So I quit my corporate job. And after I quit my corporate job, my franchise consultant realized, wow, she's really serious about this. And so FranNet being a franchise, one of the options she presented to me was FranNet because she was retiring. So yeah, it was really neat after going through her entire process and, understanding now, I mean, the options that she presented to me were completely different than pathways I had, gone down, and made a lot more sense for my lifestyle. FranNet made, great sense to me. The flexibility that it has allowed me, the ability to help people. Those were two very important things to me when I was looking for a franchise. So lo and behold, that's what I chose because that's how I'm here. So I was a client of my predecessor.
Sure. And Jenny, so you had, going back a little bit when you were in Texas, obviously you were in the food and hospitality industry, and then you went to, the cosmetic side or the beauty side whenever you went back to Florida, but still in the franchise space. Were those the franchises that you were interested in and looking at when you started looking at your own opportunities, or were you kind of done with those?
I was done with those. Food specifically just didn't interest me. I mean, I have a passion for food. I put myself through college working in restaurants and, serving tables and bartending, and that was how I paid my rent. So I had a passion that way, but I also knew the hard side of the business. And so that part wasn't appealing to me, being an owner of that type of business. And then on the beauty side, I mean, that type of business was super attractive, but at the time, from a financial standpoint, that particular med spa industry was a little bit more of an investment than I was considering. Sure. I did look at some smaller, more boutique-y types of beauty and health and wellness, but so the answer is no. I didn't really look at either one of those as an option, just where I was in life.
Sure. So talk us through a little bit more detail about your process when you started working with the franchise consultant. So, and what was the lady's name that was the franchisee?
Her name was Pat.
Pat. So you started meeting with Pat. Was she showing you options at that time? Like you mentioned, there were some things that you just weren't really interested in. Like, what were the things where you were like, no way? And then what were some of the things before you decided on the FranNet route? What were the things that you were really interested in?
Well, I'll actually go back even further. Before I met Pat, I was looking at, I was thinking, okay, doing the Google search, like I said, but I also was thinking, okay, what's popular here in where I am. And senior care came to mind. I mean, we have lots of seniors here in Florida. There's baby boomers are retiring 10,000 a day or whatever that crazy statistic is. So I started looking into senior care, mainly home health, because that's kind of the route that a lot of franchises go, is more the home health, whether it's skilled care or unskilled. So I actually went pretty far down that line, and just realized, my goal was flexibility, and that wasn't going to offer as much flexibility, at least not in the shorter term, as I was looking for. Yes, I would be flexible because it would be my own business, but it just not as much as I was looking for. Plus, I didn't want to manage a lot of employees, and we know with home health care, it is, you're churning and burning with caregivers a lot, which wasn't in my wheelhouse to have to do that. So that was, an example of one that did not work for what my profile is. Once I started working with Pat, I started looking at brands such as some marketing, with my marketing background. I started looking at some marketing types of franchises, and I started looking at some fitness types of franchises, something that could be a little bit more semi-absentee, because even though I said I was going to quit my job, most people don't. So, that could have been an option for me there, is to just do that as well as keep my job. And I was looking at, I did look at staffing a little bit, but that was kind of the same scenario as home health care, where I didn't, that wasn't, while it was appealing to me from a business standpoint, doing the B2B standpoint, it wasn't as appealing to me again on the, recruiting end. So those were some things that I was looking at when I was working with her, which all three of those made way more sense than senior care did for me.
Sure, absolutely. So you looked at these options. You had probably a lot of conversations and research, and your own sleuthing and things like that. And so how did you land on the conversation with Pat, where she was retiring? What do you think was the what did she see in Jenny to make her say, hey, this could be a good fit for you?
Yeah, well, for one, I quit my job. So there was that level of seriousness that she knew. And it was her baby. She'd been doing it for over 10 years. She was in her, late 60s, early 70s. And, she really didn't want to retire. She just, she knew she should for her own sake. But she wanted to make sure she handed it over to someone who she felt like had the right characteristics for it. And so, after working with her for several months, I guess she must have seen that, I was going to take something seriously. I am very business minded. And it also just fit well with how I wanted my lifestyle dynamic to be. And so she thought that it would be a good fit. And I agreed.
Sure, absolutely. So Jenny, tell us a little bit about FriendNet. How long has the brand been around? How many locations are there? And, what's the unique value proposition for working with a FriendNet franchisee like yourself versus, some of the other franchise consulting options that are out there?
So FriendNet is one of the, it's a franchise consultancy that's been around for the longest, for the most part, or one of them. If there's another one, I don't know what it is. So over 30 years, FranNet has been around, worked both nationally and internationally. There's a FranNet consultant owner in almost every major metropolitan here in the United States. So, if there's one there's myself here in the Tampa area, we have somebody in Orlando, South Florida, Jacksonville, and then any other state, name a metro, and there's usually a FranNet consultant there. So I believe there's over right now, because not only are there consultants, but then you can have associates underneath you as well. So there's something like, I don't know, over 100 between 150 to 200 different FranNet consultants across the country. But we really do kind of, we do focus locally, although we can work with people all over the country. So I've had clients in other states, but most of my efforts are going to be local for driving. My own for getting out there and networking and getting in the community. However, I also do some digital things to be national as well. So that's kind of FranNet is all across the country. And if I am working with a client who's in another state, I always have someone I can call that knows that state better than I do. So that's kind of the beauty of it too, is that I'm not just by myself. If I know, here in Tampa, I know the difference between Wesley Chapel and West Chase, where somebody from out of this area wouldn't. But in, another state, I don't know the demographics that well. So I usually heavily lean on my other fellow consultants, and we work together.
Sure, absolutely. What I tell everyone all the time is, the biggest value in the franchise isn't the brand or the systems. It's always the other franchisees in the network. So sounds like it's the same.
Yeah.
So, diving into a little bit to FranNet specifically in your business, Jenny, what are the services that you provide? Are you just working with people who are looking to buy new franchise? Do you work with existing franchisees who are looking to either grow to other locations or sell? Like, what are the services that you offer, and what's your target clientele?
Yeah, so I am mainly working with people. I'm looking with people who have an interest in business ownership. That's, just in general interest. From there, we determine if a franchise even makes any sense for them, because it's not for everyone. Business ownership isn't for everyone, and franchise business ownership isn't for everyone. So I, work with them to help figure out what types of franchises would make sense. So I literally, my client is the person who is looking to be a business owner, but we have aligned ourselves with different franchise organizations. So FranNet is a network of different franchise organizations. We don't work with every franchise. Some of it is, very intentionally, we don't work with every franchise. We vet every franchise that comes into our system. We look at their we're going to look at their leadership and their history. We're going to look at their growth strategy. We're going to review their franchise disclosure documents. We're going to talk to existing franchise owners and do some validation there. There's a whole team at FranNet, and that's what they do. And they determine whether or not it makes sense to bring that franchise into our system or not. So we have a whole team that does that. We work with anywhere from 200 to 300 different franchise organizations that are within our network or inventory. And so we work with them to help them find quality candidates for their organization. So I purely just help people. I'm connecting the dots of introducing people who want to be a business owner with a franchise that makes sense for them. But then I'm also consulting them through the process of that, is that franchise right for them? So on the upfront, I very much so, I even have my clients do an entrepreneurial profile. So it's an assessment that hones in on motives and values, what drives them, and, really kind of what's behind, driving them and making their decisions. Because some people, they're motivated by power. Some people are motivated by family. Some people are motivated, by society. So we have different things, criteria that we kind of look at there with the entrepreneurial profile. It also evaluates, leadership style, work style, skill sets, things like that. It doesn't profile out with the perfect franchises. It's just a piece of the puzzle. And then from there, I work with my clients to build out, kind of their business model, right? Like we're going to deep dive. We're going to talk about what are you looking for? What do you want to avoid? Things like how many employees are they comfortable managing? Most people haven't thought about that. They hadn't thought, oh wait, how comfortable am I managing employees? I don't even know that. And then what are you looking for? Skilled employees? Are you comfortable with unskilled? So just really digging into different facets of business that they might not know the answer to, but they need to understand what, these are going to be some things that we're going to talk about as we talk about franchises. So after doing that deep dive, really honing in on what are their goals? What are their goals personally, professionally, financially, short-term, long-term? Then I'm able to come back to them with different franchise opportunities, because I know the franchises in our systems, they're looking for certain people with certain criteria as well. They don't necessarily need to have a background in that industry, but they're looking for people with certain skill sets and certain aptitudes for certain things. If somebody isn't willing to get out there and, go networking, and that's the kind of way that you're going to have to drive your business, that's not going to be someone I'm going to introduce to that type of franchise. So I'm connecting the dots there. And then once I make those introductions to, give my clients some options, make some introductions to some different franchise organizations. And now that's where I really come in and I hold their hand. I'm in lockstep with them, being a sounding board. What are they hearing? What are they not hearing? What questions are they asking? What should they be asking? Really making sure that they're getting all of the information that they should be getting in order to make a sound decision. And then also providing resources all along the way. So early on, I always like to introduce them to some sort of funding group. They need to understand where do they sit financially. So whenever I have a client that when I ask them, hey, have you thought about how much you want to invest in a business? And they go, oh, well, it depends on the business. It doesn't. It really doesn't. You're going to have a budget because you have a lifestyle that you need to maintain. You only probably have a certain amount of money in the bank or in savings or in, stocks and bonds or whatever you have it in. We need to work with, an investment budget here. So I usually try and introduce funding groups right off the bat. They need to understand where do they sit there and what is their funding strategy going to look like. And then also at some point they're going to want a franchise attorney, especially when it comes to the point where they get a franchise disclosure document and they look at it and their eyes cross because it's very, all legalese and, it's important and they must read it because it's chock full of everything that you should be knowing about this franchise, but it can also be difficult to read. So a franchise attorney can come in and kind of help them with that. Maybe if they don't have a small business CPA that they're familiar with, making those introductions. So being a resource to them in that entire kind of discovery process until they make a decision of yes or no. As you know, there's lots of steps. You do have to have all these calls with the different franchise organizations. They're going to teach you something, in each call. The first one might just be an introductory one. Maybe they'll talk about marketing and training in the next call. And the next one, they'll talk about territory. And the next one, they'll talk about unit economics. Because they need to educate you on this opportunity. But, and this is my client's opportunity to be interviewing them. But also that franchise organization is interviewing them in turn because they want to make sure they're a good fit for their system. So I'm going through that with them. I don't get on the calls, but we definitely touch base once or twice a week to talk about what they're hearing. And from there, at the end, when they've validated, they've talked to existing franchise owners, they've gone to a discovery day, a confirmation day, a meet the team day, or whatever you want to call it day. They're all different. From there, they have to make a decision, and I will help them however I can, even if that decision is no.
Sure. Jenny, in your business, you've been doing this, over 3 years now. How long is the average process from the time a client engages with you to the time they're signing the agreement with the franchise, or what is the typical time frame for that?
Yeah, I would have told you when I first started doing this pre-COVID that the average time frame was about 3 months. Now it's very much so elongated. People are taking longer to make decisions, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But there's a lot of a lot going on in people's lives now. So it's that has definitely been elongated. I would say it's anywhere from 4 to 6 months is probably the average at this point. But it also depends on where they are in their life. If they're still working and they don't have to get something up and running immediately, then they don't have the urgency. If they're not working because they've either quit or they've, been downsized or whatever have you, they might be a little bit more motivated to get something up and running sooner rather than later. So it kind of depends on where they are, and we'll go at whatever speed makes sense for them. But I will tell you, if I have a client that comes to me and they're like, well, I want to do something in a couple of years, that's too much time. I want to talk to them and educate them on, what the process will look like, but 2 years is too long to go through that process of, you're going to need to take the time to do it, and it's going to need to be succinct. So, answer your question. It's anywhere from 4 to 6 months is what my typical clients are right now.
Sure. Thank you. Jenny, in my experience and just talking with people who are interested in the franchise space, and I don't talk to nearly as many people as you do, where do you see people sort of disengage or get fearful? Is it really just around the financial piece, or is it more of, hey, now I have to take ownership and now I'm the one responsible? Like, where in this process do you generally see clients start to take a step back? Because I'm sure when they come to you, they're extremely excited and they're motivated. Like, where does that roller coaster kind of go through at?
Yeah, I think definitely you hit the nail on the head. It's a lot the financial piece, both on the investment side where they start to realize, wow, all this investment is going into this. So both on the investment side, but then also on the opportunity side, whether it's how long it's going to take for them to put some money in their pocket. When you're opening up a business, you have to invest. And so if they get really nervous about, what the opportunity is from an income standpoint. So I think money is generally the biggest fear that people will have. And it's on both ends, both the investment side and on what the actual opportunity can provide to them in the long term.
Sure. And, Jenny, as you were talking and explaining the process here, you use the word consultant, but really you're a coach, right? You're coaching people on what's the best outcome for them and how to get there, and the questions they should be asking and all these things. And what a lot of people don't understand is, and I'm assuming, Fran, it's the same way, there's no costs to the franchisee, right?
Yeah.
It's absorbed in the franchisor. And so it's one of those things, why not have a free coach in anything in life? If it's for free, you should absolutely sign up for it, but especially in a big, life-changing and financial decision as buying a franchise. So it's very good. Jenny, last couple of questions and then we'll let you go. What are the brands you're most excited about right now?
There's several brands that people always ask me, well, why don't you own another one? You see all these brands and you're exposed. And man, if I wasn't building a house right now, I would. My husband and I, believe me, we've talked about it, and I probably will in the future. But for right now, I will tell you, there's definitely brands that I'm excited about, but they might not excite other people because what it is that I do, it really is a match fit process. But I will tell you, there's some trends that I'm seeing that I think that especially since COVID, that I hadn't, not that I didn't see them before, but I'm starting to see more of it. More people are gravitating towards service brands. So residential service or B2B service brands. Mainly because, they realized, wait, those businesses never shut down as we went through a pandemic. But also, so because of that, where before they used to be something where people were like, why would I do that? It's a saturated industries, and that wasn't on their horizon. Now they're not as opposed to moving in that direction. So there's a lot of great service brands out there. Everything that touches a home. I mean, CertaPro. There's a lot of great anything that both for B2B and B2C. I think there's some great service brands, and I'm seeing those trends really be great. Me personally, I love pets. So I think, and pets have never been more popular. You cannot go to a Home Depot without seeing at least 3 dogs in a shopping cart somewhere. So I think pet brands right now are on the rise, and also with seniors retiring, either their pets are now their children. So I think pet brands are a big move that, I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. So there's some interesting, nice pet brands out there, whether it's, grooming, washing, even, kind of retail types of or training. And then, of course, because of my health and beauty background, I do love the health and beauty space. So anything kind of health and beauty related, whether it's small boutique, lashes, all the way up to med spas and everything in between, facials, or, I have a, massage. There is definitely something there that me personally, I gravitate toward.
Absolutely. Jenny, you mentioned, you and your husband talking about maybe buying another franchise at some point. And early on in our conversation, you mentioned, your life changing with your kids and things like that. What has been their response on as you've gone through this journey of switching from, being, a full-time employee somewhere to owning your own business and being a franchisee? How has that changed your family dynamic, or has it? And what's that done to your personal life, and have you seen an improvement there?
100% improvement. I mean, I'm not going to say that business ownership doesn't come with stress, because it absolutely does. But it's a different kind of stress. It's not stress that someone else has imposed upon me. It's stress that I can control in some form or fashion. So that alone has, I think I'm probably nicer to my husband and my kids. I'm a little bit more relaxed. I can go and, go to their little school activities, and we can go on vacations without me, being denied for, the amount of time that we want to go on. So it's allowed our lifestyle to be able to live it in the way that we want to live it. We work hard, but we want to play hard too. So with this with business ownership in this way, it's really allowed me to do that.
Awesome. Jenny, last question. What are your biggest goals for the rest of 2022 when it relates to your business?
Goals for 2022, right now, it's an employee market. So in the past, a lot of my clients, unfortunately, were unemployed because they had been downsized in some form or fashion. But right now, people are gainfully employed, and that's great. But what that means for me is that it's slower. I mentioned it before. It's been a slower people are slower to make decisions. So my goals are just to go with that flow and, just know that, hey, I might be slow right now, but there's ebbs and flows like there is to any other business. And so I want to work with my clients to still make sure that they make the best decisions possible for the climate that it is now and for the future. So just kind of going with the flow. And, especially after coming out of the pandemic, I don't know any other way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jenny, it's been a pleasure hearing your story and hearing about your journey to get to where you are today. Certainly can tell that you have a lot of, not only experience, but passion, and you're excited about what you're doing. And that means a lot. And certainly I imagine that you transfer that to your clients when they're going on this same journey that you've already been on. So thanks for sharing that story. And for anyone who's taken the time to listen to our episode, we appreciate it. I hope you join us next time.